I watched that 7-part story, so you don't have to. That's Angel, and she's letting us know about her adoption story. Now, she was born in Liberia, but she was adopted by an interracial couple from the United States when she was 4 years old. Adopted father met her at an orphanage in Liberia, and that's when he adopted her. Now, she goes on to tell us that both of her adopted parents are from rough backgrounds. Her mother is a first-generation immigrant from Germany, and her mother escaped from Germany shortly after World War II. Now, her father was Lebanese, Syrian, and American. He grew up in the South with a lot of trauma. Now, when Angel first got adopted, both of her adopted parents actually owned an African art store, and previous to that, they were both teachers. Her mother worked in English as a second language, along with teaching Spanish and German, while her father was a math and science teacher. Shortly after that, they connected with a group that allowed them to teach internationally, which is how they landed in the continent of Africa and fell in love with the various cultures there. And that's when they decided to open up the art store, and they started going back and forth to the continent and basically collecting different pieces of art in order to resell it in their art stores. Not only due to the fact that they had 2 African daughters, but also their love for the various cultures made them very involved in the North Carolina African community. And so both the girls grew up very much in African culture, learning about it. She never had a disconnect from her culture. Now, when it comes to Angel's adoption story, to her knowledge, up until the age of 23, both of her birth parents were dead, and they died somehow during the war in Liberia, and she was adopted by this interracial couple and brought to America. She knew a few other details, but later on she learns that all of it was pretty much a lie. That the truth was that her birth family was very much alive. And not only that, but her adopted sister that was also adopted from the same orphanage, her birth family was also alive. So now Angel's about 16 years old. She's been living in America. She got into classical music. She does step dancing. She's also a really great student. She does say that she had other issues in the background. For the most part, she did have a good childhood, and her adoptive parents always wanted the best for her. And so when she received a Facebook message from a woman claiming to be her birth mother, obviously it really confused Angel based on what she knew of her birth parents. She didn't initially respond to her birth mother. She actually went to her adopted mother and was like, hey, is this my mom? Like, what's going on? And her adopted mom immediately was like, no, that's not your mother. Women from Liberia sometimes like to pretend to be people's moms, and it's kind of like a scam. That's what she tried to tell her. Later on, Angel tells us she's not sure if she was trying to say like most women in Liberia do a scam like this, or if her mom specifically was trying to like convince her that she was her true birth mom, but she was a little confused, and she's like, that's something I can definitely ask my adopted mom about now. So a few years later, it's 2020, and she's 23 years old now, and she got really tired of not really knowing her medical history, especially because she doesn't know her birth parents. And so she was like, you know what, I'm going to do a 23andMe DNA test and see if I have any family out there and see if it can bring more medical history to me. So she ends up running the test, and it ends up telling her that she had a 5th cousin in California. Now, off that, she was a little confused on what 5th cousin meant, but she was like, either way, I'm going to contact this girl. So she contacts her, and she's like, hey girl, I did this DNA test, and it's telling me that we're related. Do you know who I am? She immediately got a response back, and she was like, yeah, I know who you are. We've been looking for you. Angel's confused. She's like, what do you mean you've been looking for me? She's like, both of our dads know each other. So then Angel is like, oh, did your dad know my dad before he passed away? Her cousin responds back, and she's like, what are you talking about? Your dad's not dead. So now Angel's thoroughly confused. And so her cousin's like, you know what, it's probably best that you talk to my mom. So she connects her to her WhatsApp, and they start having a phone conversation. And so Angel's asking her questions, and her cousin's mom's like, you know both of your parents. And Angel's like, well, what are you talking about? I know both my parents. She's like, yeah, you spoke to your mother. Your biological father is Brother Williams from the orphanage. And immediately that rang a bell in Angel's head, because she was like, Brother Williams, that name is plastered all over my adoption paperwork. Come to find out, Brother Williams is actually the man that's married to the woman that owns that orphanage. And he is, in fact, Angel's biological father. He was the one that gave Angel up for adoption. So now Angel's like, okay, I know where I know Brother William from, but how do I know my mother? Like, I've never spoken to my mother before. The cousin's mom is like, she tried to contact you via Facebook. And that's when Angel realizes that Facebook message she received back when she was 16 years old was in fact her mother. And her adopted mother did lie to her, telling her that wasn't her mother and it was some type of scam. The wild part is, and to this day, Angel still doesn't know how this happened, but there's a photo in her house, at her adopted parents' house, of her being a flower girl for Brother Williams's wedding to the owner of the orphanage. And she's like, how did you get this photo? Were you there before? This is when the cousin's mom told her, hey, I think you should talk to your own biological mother. You'll get many more answers there. But Angel tells us she actually ended up with so many more questions. She gets the WhatsApp information from the cousin's mother. She contacts her biological mother. They get on the phone. She said it was an emotional reunion. She ends up finding out she also has 2 half-sisters. They talk for a while, and then the conversation of Brother Williams comes up. What her biological mother told her is what her father did was a sin, and he's paying for his action. Her biological mother tells her, I've been looking for you since your father gave you up for adoption. And so Angel asked her, like, how did you even know I got adopted? So her biological mother tells her, like, hey, back then the Civil War was going on in our country, and I had to figure out a way to keep you and your older siblings safe. And so I decided to flee the country. And that's when your father told me, like, hey, leave the baby with me. Because at the time, Angel was only a few months old. He told her, leave the baby with me. Me and my family will take care of her. And you take the oldest kids and go off to Ghana. And so that's what the mother did, thinking that she was making the best decision. But instead of the father staying with his family and taking care of Angel, he decided to leave and marry the owner of the orphanage, and then also take Angel there, which ended up in her being neglected. Apparently, the father was looking for safety for Angel, but also a shelter for himself. And he thought the best way to do that was to marry the orphanage owner. Mind you, this entire time, the birth mother has no idea that he's getting married, that he took Angel to the orphanage, nothing. When she finally came back to visit, she's looking for her daughter, nowhere to be found. By that time, Angel had already been adopted and she was living in America. And when the mother asked the father, why would you do that? Why did you give my child away? He's like, I was trying to give her a better life in America. Obviously, her birth mother was infuriated, and she immediately asked for contact information to be able to talk to her daughter. And so the birth father gave her the adoptive mother's information. Initially, when her birth mother tried to contact her adoptive parents, they were not receptive, especially her adoptive mother. She did not respond and ultimately shut out her birth mother. When Angel asked her, why did you do that? Her adoptive mother's reasoning was, you were doing so well, you were in extracurricular activities, your life was rolling, and I wanted you to focus on your new life here and not be compounded with the context of everything that happened back in Africa. Mind you, even when Angel went and asked her about that Facebook message when she was 16, her adoptive mother didn't mention anything there, nor did she mention any contact that she had with her birth mother until after the 23andMe results came out. And the only reason that Angel ignored the Facebook message is because her adoptive mother told her that that woman was lying to her. Whole time, that Facebook profile page that the birth mother was running was a photo of Angel as the profile picture. In the beginning, when Angel's adoptive parents were looking for a child, they were looking for a certain name like Angel, Glory, Faith, anything kind of related to the Bible. And so at the time, her adoptive mom was kind of sick. And so she actually sent the adoptive father to go to the continent of Africa and look for a child. And the adoptive father arrived at the orphanage. He told Brother William, hey, I'm looking for a child, like a really special one, da da da. And that's when Brother Williams pointed at Angel and said, this child is my favorite child. And so the story that Angel was always told was that she saw this man and he had a red mark on his finger. And at the time, she didn't know that the red mark was actually Sharpie. And so she took the band-aid off of herself and she put it on the man, and then she called him Papa. So this made her adoptive father feel connected to her, like, oh, she's so compassionate. She's the one I've been looking for. And then when he asked the people at the orphanage, like, what is her name? They were like, Angel. He's like, oh my God, this is the very child we've been looking for. And that's what led to her being adopted. So Angel took all that information from her birth mother and took it to her adoptive mom, who pretty much confirmed everything. And so now she was like, you know what? I'm going to get a lab core test to just like solidify everything. And the results came back, and sure enough, the woman that was claiming to be her birth mother is her biological mother. Now Angel tells us she's not sharing the story to like villainize anyone or to make someone feel like a hero. She does feel like her adoptive parents did have the best intentions for her throughout her childhood. She said, were they perfect? No. Were they things that they could have done differently? 100%. She said one of the main things was because her adoptive mother's family was a different race, she was taught and brought up to believe you are a Black woman, life is going to treat you differently. And so when she got into those environments and they would say certain things that might be considered racist or microaggressions, she wished that her adoptive parents would have shielded her from that a little bit better and did a better job of protecting her from those feelings of otherness. This is also when she mentions that when her family adopted her sister, that they weren't fully aware of her medical issues along with her behavioral issues. And so as things kind of got worse in their house, her adopted sister ended up having to leave the house and be put into their family's houses, along with church groups that were intended to help children with behavioral problems, and that information wasn't disclosed to them either. Angel highlights how the orphanage lied about a lot of things, and even if there are deceptions and lies on the side of her adopted parents, she knows it was with good intentions of protecting her and not to like take advantage of her in the ways that the orphanage and Brother Williams were doing. She did also have a problem with her adopted parents' tendency to believe in the best in Brother Williams and like assuming that, you know, he doesn't have ill intentions when based on his actions, he definitely does. She learns afterwards that Brother Williams and her adoptive parents were in contact well after her adoption. adoption. They were still sending money over. They were getting updates from Brother Williams about the orphanage and about his life. Even when his wife died, they were told about it. They've sent money over several times. Even at one point, the orphanage had an explosion of some sort, and they helped send money over. And this also allowed Brother Williams to have updates on Angel and be able to tell the birth mother. So Angel believes, because they had this long-standing communication between the adopted parents and Brother Williams, this led them to kind of believe Brother Williams over the adopted mother. Angel didn't understand why her adopted parents had more smoke for her birth mother than they did for her birth father. Angel highlights, of course, these were hard conversations for her to have with her adopted parents, but they had them. It was several conversations, and now that they've been able to mend their relationships and go back to having a strong bond, which of course we want. Angel also wanted to highlight that her adopted parents are in the late 70s, and the way that they were raised and the generation that they're from also incredibly influences how they raised their children and how they operated in this world. And so she also wanted viewers to kind of, keep that in mind as well. Now Angel questions her entire adoption story. If Brother Williams actually curated it and maybe told her hey, go put this band-aid on his finger, and manipulated the situation to make sure that she went home with this family. So now Angel tells us when she finally confronts her biological father. And so she gets the contact information from her biological mother. She gets his WhatsApp. They jump on the phone. And what she was expecting initially was for him to obviously apologize and to kind of ask on updates on her life, ask about how she's been doing. Mind you, Angel didn't want to chew him out. She didn't want to yell at him. She just wanted to hear his side of the story, and also she wanted to hear updates on his life. He starts off by apologizing, expressing regret, and basically saying that he wanted a better life for her, saying, please, please, please don't hate me. She's trying to be understanding, but she also doesn't want to rush and be I forgive you. And so he goes on and says, when you left me, I lost my faith in God, but now that we've reconnected, my faith is restored. He's since my faith is restored, I'm going to want to go to church. So you think you can send me some money so I can, get some church clothes? And she's huh? And she's just listening at this point. And then he goes on and goes, and now that we're really talking, I don't want to just have phone conversations with you. I'm going to want to FaceTime with you. Why don't you send me some money so I can get an iPhone as well? At this point, Angel's pissed. She's you're not even asking me how I'm doing, how's life? You're talking about, oh, this was a sacrifice and I wanted better for your life. You're not even checking to see if my life is better. You're just asking for money. And mind you, my adoptive family is always financially supportive of me. I've never had to pay for anything, let alone be asked for money. And now this man that I don't even know that gave me up for adoption is asking for money. And she's the wild part is, had the conversation went differently, I might not have been so opposed to sending him money. And then the real cherry on the cake is when he said, and when you come and visit, I don't want to put you in a hotel. Also send me money so I can build a house. Angel clearly left that conversation heartbroken. She goes on to kind of describe her life that she lived at the orphanage and how it wasn't good, it was abusive, especially considering the fact that that orphanage was sponsored by the Red Cross. They would get deliveries, and if they got good meat, if they got fruit, the orphanage owner and Brother William would eat all the good parts and then throw the children whatever was left over. All of the children in the orphanage were crammed in a room. They had to sleep on a mattress that was soaked in urine, because a lot of these kids had seen atrocious, probably the horrors of humanity. And they're traumatized. Of course, they have issues holding their bowels. The people that ran the orphanage did not care about that, though. So these kids were subjected to horrible conditions. And then, not to mention, one of the punishments that they would do is called peppering. They would take Scotch bonnet peppers, anything that was really hot. The people that were running the orphanages would rub these peppers on anywhere where the children would sweat. So that way, when they sweat, they would burn and it would feel like their bodies were on fire. Angel said, considering that she got adopted at 4, that must have happened to her at a much younger age, because she does have a memory of that happening to her. Overall, whatever her birth father was talking about, she genuinely didn't believe, because in hindsight now she's looking back and she's why were my other siblings able to live outside of the orphanage? They're fine. I communicate with them now. Most of my family has made their way to the United States. Why was I the one that was sent to the orphanage? And she's can you imagine having to go through that and then being told the rest of your life that you're so lucky that you live with this white family in America and that you have just such a great life, and being told by your adopted family and their relatives that if you weren't adopted into that family, you could have been somewhere in Africa selling oranges. She's how am I supposed to feel about that? To find out that she was not this great sacrifice that her father made in order for her to have a great life, but in fact was a meal ticket that her father was able to milk for years after she was gone, was genuinely heartbreaking to her and to many of us hearing, I'm sure. She closed off part 7 saying that she ended up finding out that she is not the only child that Brother Williams had and gave away to an American family. She later on finds out that she actually had a half brother that was also living in the United States, but he had a horrible upbringing. Parts of his story were actually published. The lies that that Brother Williams, along with that orphanage, spewed for years, obviously affected many people and changed and altered the trajectory of countless people's lives. But Angel, I'm really glad that, for the most part, you were able to make the best of this. You're able to find the truth. And I hope that moving forward, you're able to continue kind of fostering a relationship, not only with your birth mother, but your half siblings that you've discovered. And then also continue having a beautiful relationship with your adoptive parents like you have. I'm wishing you the best. This story definitely broke my heart. You guys tagged me in this a bunch. I wanted to give her some time to finish it out, but I wanted to make sure I got it out to you guys as well. I appreciate you guys as always. Bye.